Good evening, good afternoon, or good morning, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome to Raising Excellence, one of the most valuable hours of your day. I'm Michael, MC and community conductor today for today's adventure. And today's show is Values, an introduction, how to value, how your values pave your path. Step two in our own Tim Flynn's Foundations of Self Discovery. Yes, we're talking about values. Let's meet our fabulous host today, and I'll start off with our psychosomatic illuminator, Agnieszka.
Hi, thank you very much for welcoming me. Psychosomatic Illuminator, I finally came up with a title. I hope you guys like it. Yeah, it was a hard road. It was a hard road. So, welcome everybody. I'm really looking forward to talking about values.
And our trauma consultant, Willow.
Hello, everybody. I'm really happy to be here.
And finally, our last host for the day is our expert executive, or I'm sorry, our freedom facilitator, Dennis.
Hi, everybody. Glad to be with you. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule and honoring us with your presence here. Thank you.
So we're going to kick it off here, but I want to let everybody know, for those of you that are watching live, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to ask away or get your input in. We will be happy to answer any questions or any comments. So let's start off with the basics. When it comes to values, what are they? Where do they come from? And what is important to know about them? Who wants to start off?
Have you checked out the meaning of the word values, actually, where it comes from?
Have you?
I did.
I hope somebody did.
Go for it, Dennis.
Well, it was a brief research, but that came to my mind first, like, oh, where does the word actually come from? What does it really mean? In English, I found it to be described as, well, it means to think highly of. And the root of the word goes back to Latin valere, which means to be strong or to be well, which I found interesting because in my homework, which I started to do already, like I came across well-being, but we leave that for later. Anyway, and then so my French is not very good, but the French word, is it valu? It would mean worth, also the price or the worth of something. And it also includes the moral worth of something. And it can also describe the standing or the reputation of someone or something.
So, would it be like connected or related to the word valiant?
Oh, wow, that I couldn't answer for sure.
It has the
But
same root, right?
Yeah, definitely. It also, I read, it describes the degree to which something is useful or estimable to somebody. So that was just the results of a quick research I did earlier. And well, for me personally, like, values was something I started to pay attention more to after some organizational development, actually after a great organization, they're called Fight for Peace, or Luta pela Paz in Portuguese, started to work together with my little organization that I have that I founded in Jamaica. And they gave us some support, and they suggested that it would be something really useful to actually determine values for us as an organization. And that sparked like a very interesting process for us. And which led us to a journey to really ask ourselves as an organization, as a group, who are we, what do we stand for? And so that was something like a interesting story that developed from there. So when I heard values, then those memories came up for me, like how we cannot even only define values for ourselves, like what is important for us as individuals, but we can extend that also, to an organization that we're part of, or maybe even to our family, and define values for us as a group. So I think that's an interesting process, even for us, at Raising Excellence, to to ask ourselves, what do we stand for, and like what is estimable, what is useful for us, and what do we as a group also think highly of.
Yep. Yeah. When I lived in Calgary, I was communications director for a charitable organization. It was the Unity Church of Calgary, and the Unity Church International has a big presence. There are many Unity churches, and it's like a big organization. So one year, after having a bit of a challenging time with our board of directors, with the previous board of directors, when the new board of directors was established, they actually sent somebody from Unity International to develop values, mission, and vision. And it was like a whole weekend workshop, and we did the value sort as a group, which is a lot more difficult. And they actually had so many people, like members of the community also showed up to this day. So they had 4 or 5 groups that developed values, and then we all came together and we compared our values and we selected the most important 5. So the process that we follow in Raising Excellence for Value Sort is slightly different, but very similar.
So you're basically saying that identifying values also ties back to identifying a vision and a mission for us on our personal journey, but also maybe for an organization or for the family or for the tribe that we are part of.
Yeah, for sure. And the values are slightly different, like your personal values versus your family values versus your community values or your work values. They might be all different sets of values. But in this particular process, what we did is once we went through all the 400 values and selected and whittled it down to 5 that were true for the community, and everybody voted and everything, then we used those 5 initial values to bring us to our mission and our vision. Basically, the mission and vision being something you can never achieve in 1,000 lifetimes. That's a big, huge, something that's bigger than you could possibly accomplish, but that's like your 10 times goal. And then mission being how you're actually doing it in the world.
I would be really interested to hear, and maybe that would be interesting also for listeners, what did that process do for you as an individual and also for the organization? Why is it important to look at values, to identify them, and to find out what we regard as, or what we think highly of?
Yeah, the process was amazing. I really liked it, and I liked the process, like the time it took to think about the values and select the values, and everybody's different opinions of what each word means, because each person has a different definition of pretty much every word, and often they overlap, but there are some slight differences. So it's very interesting. I've used the process with my coaching clients since doing the value sort and arriving at the mission and vision in a similar way as we did in the community at that time.
I'm wondering, I'll just throw this question out there in regard to what people have as values, how much of them is established as subconscious or subconsciously kind of adopted values that they either got from their parents or got from culture and that kind of thing. Does anybody have any feelings on that?
I was going to touch on that from like a personal or individualistic level. Identifying your values can help you identify to me, it's basically your priorities. It's what you want to spend time on. And a lot of people, myself included, have lied to themselves about their values. Like I would say that I wanted to accomplish a goal, and that was my my goal was to accomplish that. And I placed all my value in that. I'm sorry, my train of thought is leaving the station currently. A lot of people don't realize where they're spending their time, I guess is what I'm saying. So they will think they have the values that they wish they had, and they'll say that they have the values they wish they had, but in reality, their real values are being ignored because they're not ready to accept them. Like, for example, people who are drinking themselves to sleep at night, their value is to get good rest, ultimately, but they don't realize that they're doing more harm because they're not even willing to accept that their value is actually just to be able to function. Did that make sense?
Yeah.
So one of the outcomes of really becoming aware of the values that that we might hold subconsciously, because they were given to us, or we grew into them, or family, or maybe even society or media, basically imprinted them upon us. So one of the outcomes would be to actually become conscious of the values that we are holding, maybe subconsciously, and then identifying those that we truly need to advance, to raise, to move forward, and to kind of check in with ourselves, like if the goals that we have, if the mission that we feel we are on, if that really can be achieved with the values that we presently hold. That's kind of what I heard.
Yeah, earlier when you guys were saying subconsciously, values are subconscious manifestations of our childhood. If we were presented a value sort, would we even know that those are our values, or are they so subconscious that we wouldn't even pick them from a value sort?
I think you would pick them from a value sort because they're going to be deeply ingrained, such as someone who was pushed into like a caretaker role where they had to fix all the problems. They're going to naturally notice situations where they feel an immense desire to do this. It seems highly useful and beneficial of their time to spend time in this, doing this activity. So I'd say at the very least, you may not realize it's two different parts of your personality, but you would see a contradiction. You'd be like, well, I do want to go to this party because I want to like show up for my friends that invited me, and whatever you're trying to achieve there. But you also may want to stay home because you want to achieve some self-care.
Yeah, well,
if you're honest with yourself.
If it's a caretaker imbalance, they might go to the party just because someone might get drunk and might need help, and they're just being the band-aid, proactive band-aid, right?
Exactly. And that person would say that they value taking care of other people. And in reality, they value feeling useful.
Right. You're so
What
smart.
about,
and that's not a bad thing.
What about when values are in conflict with each other? Like a lot of people that are in the military or in the police, essentially they may have a value to be obedient or be faithful to the authority, and at the same time they have a value that's probably preserve life, be free, those kind of things, and they have a conflict. What happens in their how do they do that?
I was going to say, not even to mention the other part that's like, my value is to provide a paycheck for my family. I think the only way to get around that is to acknowledge it's a need. Yeah, you need to be able to have a skill that puts food in your mouth and food on your family's table. Yes, you need something in your life worth fighting for. And you kind of have to reevaluate, is the current substitute for that, is that a substitute, or is it actually filling that place in your life?
I can see how it relates back to something Agnieszka mentioned a few minutes ago about the definition, because if we take on a definition of freedom, for example, or of I don't know, humility or health or grace, or what it means, if we take on a definition, that if you take on the word as a value, or if you take on that value, and yet that value has been defined by somebody else, or by like a different agency, how they define it, then we might not even precisely understand or know like what it means, what the value really is. So we have never really gone out of our comfort zone and actually defined for ourselves, what does it mean to be free? What does it mean to be well? What does it mean? What does unity mean to me? What does it mean to provide bread for my family to me? Like, what is the exact number? When would I have fulfilled that value? When would I have lived up to my own expectation to fulfill that value, instead of to somebody else's definition and expectation? And remembering the process that we went through as a group, it was super difficult, and it took so much more time than we initially expected it to take, to actually define for us first a few values, um, and from what I understand, it should not be something that you like, something foreign to you, but it should be something that describes you as an individual, or in our example, us as a small organization. So we had to eventually take a weekend off, and because we on one hand we were a small organization, but we kind of represented people from all walks of life. So there was, in Jamaica you would say uptown and downtown people. They were like middle class or upper class people, and there was a lot of people with an inner city background. There was children and youths, so there was different age groups. So that was really like a diverse group of people that came together, and we all had a few things in common. So it was a whole process of identifying what those things were, and then also to put the right words on them. And then we found out that by finding out the right words, that different people had different definitions for those words. And so yeah, it took us actually, yeah, quite a few months, and in the end, like, we had to get together. And that was nice because we used it as an excuse to go on a weekend retreat, to go to a different space, to get together, work out together, go to the beach together, and just spend time together, thinking an entire weekend about those values that would describe us. So then we would not just take on the words. In our case, it was perseverance, unity, integration, respect, and harmony. But we also would sit together and take time to define it in like a one phrase, what those values actually stand for, how we define, let's say, respect or unity for us as a group. And then we took it also as something that it the values that we thought were fitting for us would have to be something that on one hand we want to live up to, so something that inspires us, and on the other hand it's also something that is already part of us. So it could not be anything foreign, or something that's totally different from who we already are as an organization.
So
And yeah.
how did having those values defined after months of searching, how did that affect your organization? Did it make it that much more resilient or strong, or how did it work?
hmm, it was a key for that was sorry, that it is something we would have to remind ourselves constantly about. So during this, throughout the sessions, so there had to be, even like branding came into it, and we had like a very, very tiny pot of resources to do that. But we made efforts that if we sent messages, or when we met together for classes and for sessions, we would remind each other about it. But then in our setting, an ideal thing would have been if we would have had like our own space, and then you would put up banners and posters, let's see, for with pictures of us, of the as a group, or if the children that train with us, with those values underneath it. So that was one of the goals, actually, to reach like basically an amount of funds where we could afford to print out those, to put them up on the walls. Then we would brand like our the flyers with them as well, our website, and just to have them constantly have materials around it that would constantly remind you of those values, because it's also then something that we as a group would start to identify with. So sometimes it was a joke, like, how does that live up to respect, or what you just did. So it was, like, it was funny on one time, but it served also to kind of remind everybody of, oh, like, we identify as a group, and we identify with a certain behavior, and with a certain, we hold certain expectations to each other as well. And so it was a very interesting and strong process, and I think there is much more room for us even to live up to that. And that's also why I'm using this moment now to kind of remember, how that can be maintained over the time, and the importance of really of putting processes in place, so to say, that continue to remind you about that. And I see how that would apply to me as an individual. I would want to put it up. I would want to create situations where I would remember the values, or the things that I want to live up to on a daily basis. Maybe like some little pin notes over here, over there, or even like let people around me know about them, and have them hold me accountable of the standards that I would like to live up to. So those are some of the thoughts that go through my mind now, looking back at the process we underwent as a group, and kind of with this process that we are undergoing now, like um, applying those experiences to myself as an individual. So That's actually like a whole new vision that I get along through this process. How is it for you? Do you did you consciously identify values for yourself already, that you identified and that you defined, like, with words or with a phrase, and that you live up to? How is that experience for you?
Well, I would say, and this actually kind of goes into our second discussion topic about, building our path, where we're going to go. Um, it's similar to, I guess, Ben Franklin is somebody that comes to mind in his 13 virtues, where he outlined 13 virtues that he ascribed to, but he had to, diligently practice those every day. And every day he would hit a new virtue of those 13 and just make that the main focus of that day. And that's, there's an organization that does, or used to be, the Franklin Planner. And that was where I really got first introduced to that idea of, of really establishing my own values rather than just inherently believing that, oh, well, my values came from my family or my values came from my community. I actually have a choice. And so then it was more of what I want, and what really works for me. But it is something that's interesting because, it sounds like values are something that we should inherently value, but it's actually something that we have to strive for. It's something we have to work on. I don't know. Anybody else want to comment on that?
I just remember the situation, because you just mentioned, is it obedient, or was it Agnieszka? In like with the military context, and that just triggered a memory. Once I was teaching a group of children. It was in Trenchtown, in Top Jungle, and we were talking about after class, which is the moment when everybody, sweat and is powered out, and the energy is like, whoa, the physical energy went out, and then we can sit down and actually, start to communicate and talk, like, on a whole different level than before the class, when everybody's still, like, trying to find out what's going on and has energy all over. So we would sit down, and there was and my topic for that class, because then I would use that, I would choose values, or I would certain behaviors or certain things that I would want to reinforce or point I wanted to get across with the class. So I would structure a class or workshop around a specific topic. Let's say respect, for example. And so I would design the physical movements and the exercise we did together, to get at respect from that angle. And in the end of the class, after we were finished the physical workout, and we would sit together and we would start to talk about it. And I asked the question, what does it mean to be, and I try to not put it out in pathways, like to be a good youth, like a good child, to be a good person.
How would you
what
say
does
that
it mean?
in patois?
Because then it's gonna mess up everything. Already. So and they were answering, oh sir, yes. And one little boy, he must have been maybe 5 or 6 years. He said, yeah, I know, like, and he like, be obedient. And he was like so proud, because, like, like the other children were kind of shy, and he was like, and like he was so proud that he shouted it out just loud, be obedient. I was like, wow, like, just thinking in my mind is like, wow, that's really the work. The work is not to show them how to do cartwheels and to spin on their hands and to throw kicks, but it's really that to get them to understand that, it's really to be obedient. What does that mean? So the discussion went around that. So also, does that mean if somebody tells you to jump out of the window, you're going to do that because you're obedient? And it's like to bring those things to conscious. And it just came to my mind because in that moment, it meant, like, for me, it was like, wow, the work right now is to explain what obedient means. And it, like, in that moment, I'm up against, the school system that taught them to be that. I'm up against their parents and society, the community at large, who tells them, you must listen, and, you have to discipline. And so it's like in that, if you're not obedient, you're a bad child and you're spoiled, and, if daddy says something, if mommy says something, if me as a elder person in the community tell you to do ABC and you don't do it, you're not obedient, you're a bad child. And that's something, at least in that community or in that setting, it's ingrained so heavily in them. And I always felt like I'm really like stepping on a razor blade in a way, because I have to relate to the community leaders. I have to relate to oftentimes teachers and to parents as well. And so I had to find a way of of try to work with the children on a level that they would understand that not everything the teacher or society or the adults around them do or tell them how to behave is actually in their best interest, or is the only view. And so I'm sorry, I'm going on a tangent there, but that just came to my mind. Oh, the obedient thing. So maybe in a way, many of us as adults, like in that setting in downtown Kingston, in Trenchtown, it shouts, that little boy, he just screamed it right out in your face. But maybe this is just a very obvious manifestation of how many people around us actually, behave or take on behaviors or values then that are actually not expressing who they truly are, and that don't really come from within them, and that don't serve them on their particular journey, but that actually make them get stuck on where they are in life, and prevent them from moving forward and from really realizing who they are and from achieving their true potential. And I think the value of this week, of the course that we are running through of values, for me lies into that of again using this topic of values to kind of guide us back to ourselves, to our true self. Like what, who are we? We it's about self-discovery, and who are we in terms of values, and how can we express that, and how can we improve, how can we move forward by identifying who we are, where we want to go, and how we describe that.
Absolutely, that's great. That was a great example. Honestly, I think that really put it in perspective for me. I thought that was an excellent example. I did forget that we have a journaling update at the end of the show, so I'm going to go to our third topic, which is the exercises and techniques to identify values. Let's talk a little bit about that. I know we've got one in particular that Tim has suggested that we're going to utilize for Wednesday's meeting, but does anybody else have any other ideas or experience or concepts in regard to finding values, understanding values, being able to identify what values we have versus what our actions are, or anything like that?
I feel like this has probably already been said by many people before, but self-reflection, taking at least 5 minutes a day and thinking about yourself, any sort of meditation, anything that draws you inward, helps you reflect on your past without having an emotional reaction. That's where you're going to find your values, when you're calm and you realize that you want to do something, but maybe you have other obligations, and you'll really be able to see your values being weighed. Like, which one do I care about more? It's that practice is absolutely priceless, and it's completely free. You can do it anytime. No one even really has to know what you're doing.
Yeah, I have one thing to add as well, and it's like the exercise that we're going to post for this talk is a value sort, but the way they do it is you take a whole bunch of values and you group them into similar values. So all of the one type of value, all of the obedience values will be together, and all of the independence values will be together. And that's one way of doing it. But that's not how I prefer to do it. I prefer to engage a lot more of my intuition. So I start off with like the 200 or 400 list of value, and I circle everything that speaks to my heart, right? It's very girly, very, anything that speaks to my heart. And then I try to eliminate any words that kind of mean the same thing, but again, from the heart, like, going through the list again, not grouping them or sorting them, just going through the list and crossing out my selections. And I keep crossing out my selections until I'm left with 5 values. And in my way, I think that if 2 of them are similar, it's still okay. Versus in the other technique, I think the similar, like it's more cerebral rather than body or intuition or whatever. But it's just as good, whatever everybody prefers, right?
What about the function of religion and some of the other spiritual pursuits in regard to determining values? Anybody have a comment regarding that?
I was going to mention archetypes, and that's not just with religion. It's with any spiritual practice. A lot of the archetypes embody certain values that if you identify with, you can pick that out and say, oh, this is something that is important to me, or this is something I struggle with, and it is a big part of my life, but I don't want it to be. That can really help a lot.
Yeah, I think the archetypes are a very interesting, combination of a lot of different things. They're, I guess, a combination of all the kind of myths and literature and religions and everything else kind of combined into sort of a set of values that go into particular areas that deal with particular behavior. I think it's a really good one. I think we've talked about this a little bit before, the book King, Warrior, Lover, Magician, but it is a valuable thing. But I'm still kind of interested in the religion, because I know there's a lot of people that are, I think they derive a lot of their values from their religion or their church.
But do they derive, do they take the values from the religion, or do they choose the religion based on their inherent values? Because if you're born in a religion, in a situation where that particular belief system really clashes with your internal values, I don't think you were going to embody that religion. You may be a person who on the outskirts of the religion. You, as an adult, you may move away from that religion. But if the religion, I mean, yeah, of course there are people who nature takes over and, they kind of repeat what their parents told them. But for a lot of people, I think the religion is a reflection of their values as opposed to a source of them. Does that make sense?
I think it can. I think it can go both ways, right? So if you would just blindly follow and copy, and that could be from a religion or from an institution or whatever, it's like the values that are set out, then it will depend on the values and on how they are defined in that framework, whether whether they will do good or bad for you, or how far or where you will go with adhering to those values. But then you're basically giving away you're giving it away to that framework, whether it's through a religion or through an organization, who will determine your values and where they're going to carry you. But then, I think that's what I'm hearing, what you tried to describe a while ago, is that if religion, and the name religion itself, the word religion is highly interesting, because it's basically to look back at if it's to look back at who you truly are and where you really come from, and if through that you are able to actually see, not to depend on that institution or on the specific religion or that framework, but if you can, through that framework, be guided back and kind of mirror back to what is already inside within you and what feels right, and what is, Agnes, you were saying, like, that what connects to your heart, I think then it's something valuable. And then in the end, you would not, be dependent on that framework, on that religion, or on even that person, but it would be like a mirror, right? Like a teacher who is basically mirroring back something to you and guiding you back to yourself. So it can be both, right? It can be a situation where you're going to become dependent on that framework and made dependent in many ways, or where it then provides you with the resources and with the reflection to actually really find out what is of value and of worth for yourself, and what empowers you then in the end. And I think that, so then in Sanskrit, I think it's called, the word is vairagya. The distinction is what we need to have, like the ability to discriminate. And discriminate, the word itself doesn't only have like a negative connotation, but to basically to
Discern.
distinguish,
Discern.
to discern. Yeah, between between that, is it something that is helpful to me, that empowers me, that moves me forward, or is it something that actually makes me dependent and takes away my power and my energy? So that discernment really is something I believe that we need, and we need to take responsibility for that, and that nobody else can really do for us, because nobody else knows what kind of journey we're on and what really is the right path and the right decision for us.
Yeah, it's interesting because ever since I've learned about linguistics, I'm just going to add this one quick thing. Well, ever since I learned about linguistics, I always when I hear Sanskrit words, I always try to figure out what Slavic word, because they're supposed to be related, right? What Slavic root word it's related to, and the word you said, varaduska, is that what you said?
Vairagya, I think.
Varagyas. So the beginning vara in Slavic means to guard, to be on guard. Or to stay away, like guard and keep something out or something away. So I think that's very interesting in context with that word.
That's actually fascinating and ties into what I was gonna answer Mike's question about, like, what kind of values do you think you get from religion? A really big one is a instant community. If you have an instant community, you're instantly safer. Your whole biology, your neurobiology will tell you that you're safe, and you have a sense of, or an ability to actually self-reflect at that point. You're not on guard because you have a whole group of people who are on guard for you. So that was fascinating that you said that, right? Because I was like, from a trauma perspective, the two biggest values that you're trying to re-establish is safety and stability. And instant community kind of gets both of those right. That speaks to the heart of that question. Nice. Or that problem.
Good tie-in.
Well, I guess I was gonna point out that like religion, we have like state and nationalities and stuff like that, and people kind of embody their country's own values as well. And you get in wars where you've got France or Germany or England versus Germany or whatever, but we've got those because I can recall when I first went in the military, I was my spirit, I'm red, white, and blue. I'm a totally passionate, flag waving kind of guy, and those were my values, but that was not, those were kind of misplaced values. And and I really believed that I was trying to do the right things, but I certainly wasn't. And I think that's one of those areas that how do we get the energy to be that discerning, to go against the community of people that are leading us down a path that could be detrimental to our well-being.
The battle is inside your own heart.
I was just gonna say that, it starts inside of each one of us, right? Because we can't point fingers at anybody else, the politicians, the police, the this, the that, because in the end, who is that? Those are also just fictions, really, the constructs that are there. But they're, if we don't believe, our belief in them is already what gives them power. So if we give our power away to something artificial, like a construct, then we're leaving the realms of reality, really, because it's a fictitious thing, and it gets, the more people believe in it, the more power it gets. I was just reminded of a quote from Krishnamurti, and I can't repeat it. I don't know it from heart, but it was really fitting. It was talking about that making differences between nations, between armies, saying that even between gender, or you're a man, you're a woman, you're from Germany, you're from Canada, you're from Mexico, that in that action itself, there's already violence. That is breeding violence, because it divides people. It creates division. And that was really interesting, because the more I thought of that, it's like it really makes sense. So already identifying somebody else as, oh, you are a woman and you're a man, and like I wouldn't think consciously of, oh, like I'm being violent like that, but truly it's like it's a division. It's not, you're not you're not focusing on what unites you, on what you have in common, but you're already calling somebody as, you from over there, you from over here. And um and the and then there was another quote which I also can't quote exactly, but it is from Maharish. He's I was remembered, and he was saying, he was talking to I think somebody was asking him, what about the other, and the difference between the other and the self, and he was saying, well, there is no other. So the thing is that there's only the self, that truly there is no other. And to be able to see that, and to continuously, I guess, see or perceive the world from that there is no other, there would be no need to make a difference between you and the next man or next woman or somebody from over there or from over here. So, and then I just thought that was a beautiful, that maybe there's value in that. Maybe it is value in holding that, in perceiving the world like that, that there's no other, really and truly.
That makes me think of
Okay.
a part. Sorry, Mike, go ahead if you.
No, go ahead. Please go ahead.
Okay. It reminded me of a part in The Body Keeps the Score, about a therapist who was working with war vets who had PTSD, and they got to a point where they couldn't continue their therapy, the whole group, until they bought him a special watch and a uniform to literally symbolize making him one of them. He couldn't continue being of help and service to them unless they symbolically made him just like them. And it's interesting how that division is it can be used as such a weapon. You can even use it against yourself, because you can be like, I've been through something that no one else understands and I can explain it to them, but unless I make them in my mind just like me, you can't accept help from them. It's such that divide is so detrimental, I think, to the psyche of humans living together. I guess human society, a functional, healthy human society.
And isn't that interesting as well? Just as the example that you gave, like, so he had to put on like a uniform and kind of disguise him for them to recognize him as part of their group. And then, thinking of, like, you were talking about, Mike, you were talking about, your military career, being a soldier. And then we also, frequently touch upon trauma. So when you see somebody angry, for example, then, you being calm and peaceful, you might think, oh my God, he's way down there, and like, why is he acting? And that's terrible. But you don't know, maybe for that person, this is actually, a step up the ladder. Like, maybe he was depressive or almost suicidal, and being angry is actually like a step up on the emotional ladder for him. So, there are certainly people for who it is actually a step up, to identify with a religion that others might call dogmatic or bad, and or for somebody it might be actually like a step up in his or her journey on development of, putting on a uniform and living up to values that other people determine for him or her. It's like, really, it depends on the perspective, right, that we take on. But then, of course, also it's always like as we are all like on a journey progressing forward and raising excellence for ourselves individually, and also wanting to spread that across the world. So I believe essentially the right thing to do is what we're doing right here, is to bring awareness to our own state, and help our listeners and others also to do that, to bring more awareness, so that we can move forward individually, but also together as a community and as humanity.
Well, let me say I really enjoyed where this conversation went to. I really feel like we made some real progress here in discussing this topic, and really kind of come into some real kind of objective kind of ideology about what values are. So I'm really happy with where we went with this discussion today. So we're wrapping up our show for today, or the main topic for today. And we've got a exercise for Wednesday that we've all agreed to do. And are we going to recommend this to the audience?
Yeah, we're going to
Is
share
there
the
any
value sort
details
exercise in
that
the
we should know
description of
about?
the video once it becomes available for me to edit on YouTube and Facebook and Periscope. But I was really looking forward to
So
the
you guys
public
can
shaming.
check that out. We're going to be doing.
It's time for public shaming
I
now.
had a question.
Yeah,
Okay,
well,
go
this is.
ahead. Interrupt public shaming for a question.
You got a question?
Yes, I will always interrupt public shaming for anything. It's bad, Agnieszka. Bad.
I'm not the one doing
no,
it. It's Mike's job.
Oh, bad Mike. Now I forgot what I was gonna ask. Oh, the value sort. My brain is like a squirrel. It gets distracted. Are we going to do the value sort? I know we're going to each individually do it, but are we going to do one as raising excellence? Because I think that would also be a good activity. Because I really liked how Dennis was talking about, like, his group did it. It benefited them, and I think we could benefit from a little bit of insight. We're just as lost as everybody else who's listening to us, so.
Definitely.
Yeah, well, I think that would be a good exercise. So that's what we've got to look forward to on Wednesday. We're gonna take the test at our homework, and then on Wednesday we'll be talking about what we got as our results, and we'll be sharing that and combining it into what it means for raising excellence. Now we can talk about journaling for a little bit. So how did everybody do on their journaling this week?
I can say that I would not be
volunteer?
keeping up with the journaling throughout the week if I didn't know that public shaming happens every Monday. So, but in effect, I'm starting to enjoy it more and more. At the beginning, the first week, I only wrote one sentence. I was very defiant about it. And now I'm writing a page on, like, regularly. So it's getting a bit of more of a second nature, but I really like the fact that you're holding us in this framework and that we have to, like, because of course journaling is not like jail, but Agnieszka's like, don't do it to me. But essentially it's really good for me. It's really healthy. So I really appreciate you coming up with this idea and holding us to it. Thanks.
Great.
I was going to also say thank you because I had already wanted to do journaling, but since we have the exercise and there's actually been like people asking about it, I don't really know what it is about the journaling, but it's been an immensely grounding practice. Like my mental fog during the day is not nearly as bad, and a lot of other emotional regulation issues are not as intense. So I'm not really sure what it's doing, but it's doing something good.
Awesome. I'm glad you're having positive results.
I must say there's much room. There's much room for me to improve upon my journaling, and what I'm really looking forward to is to break out of a little framework, because I have been writing down things, like answering those three basic questions, like what is going on right now, like what am I feeling in this moment when I write down, and then the other one is like what do I want to improve on, and what do I want to change. Like what I appreciate as well. So I've been just like I had like those 3-4 basic questions that I address, and what I really look forward to is kind of break out a little bit, like with the guidance that you gave us, to more write like in a free flow. And what I noticed too is that the 1 or 2 days lately that I gave myself a little more sleep, I actually got the immediate benefit of remembering my dreams and of dreaming really heavily. So that's what I started doing in the morning. When I woke up, I started to write down my dreams, because I used to forget them like really quickly. And some of the self-discovery exercises that we did also were actually heavily suggesting that I should like really pay attention to my dreams, and that there's a lot of intuition that comes through at that level, and that even if it doesn't make sense in the moment, that later you might get clues from it. So that has been the developments in the last couple of days, but I still really empowered to give it more time and more focus on a daily basis. So I'm looking forward to report much more next Monday.
Yeah, there's a particular quote that I really like. It's actually from the open source Everything Manifesto, and it says something along the lines of the evolution of evolution is a journey from unconscious to conscious choice. And so that, I think, is one of those areas where when you're writing down your dreams, you're really kind of being more receptive to understanding the communication you're getting from your subconscious mind. And so that's always a good thing, to kind of establish that connection between your conscious and subconscious mind, because really it is a way in which we can make our conscious choices about who we are and where we go in our lives, because really we have an unlimited potential, and it is just a matter of us making that conscious choice rather than leaving that to our subconscious mind, because our subconscious mind is our supercomputer. It is really it's in what that is exactly. I don't know if that's necessarily in our head or in our whole body or our spirit or whatever, but it is something in which is very powerful, much more powerful than our conscious mind. Yeah. And leveraging that by utilizing our conscious mind to make the choices about what are the values and so forth that we take it's a powerful step in the right direction.
Hey, wait a minute.
I had a question.
Who holds Michael accountable for his journaling?
Have you been journaling, Michael?
Yeah, Michael.
I do.
Every day?
In fact, just to give you a little thing here, so that's how I keep my journal. It's pretty simple. It's kind of like a version of the bullet journal. But honestly, in the past weeks, because we did the self-discovery exercise, I've been actually writing down my feelings and emotions, taking a little bit of extra time and writing those down. And it has been a really powerful thing for me to acknowledge my own emotions and my own feelings and stuff like that. And a lot of times it's really positive. On other occasions, it's a little bit, disconcerting. But I think the more you know, the better. And certainly, I'm benefiting as well. I'm benefiting because I do regularly journal, but now I'm getting these new ideas from you guys, incorporating those, and I'm getting even better. But I will mention one other thing, because Anishka mentioned this. I don't believe in shaming. I don't believe in punishments. I don't believe in rewards.
That's why I keep saying
it. I think those are all things.
To get your goat.
that people shouldn't really. There's a really good logical reason why you shouldn't be punishing.
Public shamings are not recommended.
Yourself. Really look for the value in whatever it is that you're doing, because that's really the true value that we can get out of our lives, are the things that we actually do. So, with that said,
hang on, did Dennis have something to add? Because we kind of.
That was really funny. Yeah, I was just before I start talking, I was going to ask a question, and my question would have been regarding emotions, like writing and emotions. So I wanted to ask you, while you are journaling, are you consciously focusing on your emotions? Are you bringing those in? Because I know there's techniques of when you want to when you write about what you want to achieve or your goals that lie ahead, that you put yourself, that you don't just dryly write it on, but you put yourself in an emotional state, also as if it was already in place, and you focus on details, and there's different techniques. So I was going to ask you about that, if you consciously engage in a specific emotion when you write, or put yourself in a state while you do that. And you pretty much talked about emotions that you have been focusing on, so that was really funny.
Yeah, well, I in general, I try and just take note of what the emotional state I'm in at the moment. There are particular times that I do kind of put myself in a bit of a writing trance to get a real connection with my subconscious mind. But in general, I'm just trying to gauge where I'm at when I take that moment to check it out.
But
But
the other day at our meeting, you mentioned that you
there's
threw
something
your
else I wanted to point out.
sorry, but you threw yourself in the
Go ahead.
feedback loop, right? Because you said you were saying how you feel great about this meeting and then you feel great about the next meeting. And you said, I feel good about life so many times that you started feeling good about feeling good. And it started raising your vibration and you were like,
Yeah,
woohoo, this is awesome. So it's writing down your emotions can be
yeah.
very powerful, especially when you're feeding.
Oh, absolutely.
That
Certainly when
really,
you're around other people and that. Uh,
Even, and I have
sorry.
a brief,
go ahead.
um, sorry, go ahead, Will. Sorry, I didn't want to cut you off.
No, it's okay. Go ahead, because I forgot.
Mine was on shaming. Like I remember the situation about shaming because, and it might even fit better now because even shaming can turn around and turn into something positive when you do it in Jamaica. So there was this very nice guy from England who came and we were talking workshops and because he was new to Jamaica, he was really astonished that, when we said, we meet at 9 o'clock, at 9:30, there was like 5 out of 30 people there, and people came in like little by little, and he was like, no, that can't go on, and we have to do something about that. So it's like, and it was like a really cool guy, and it was a fun guy, and so, but he said, no, that must be different tomorrow. Everybody, like in the morning, who comes late even by 1 minute, you have to dance in front of the whole group. And it's Jamaican people, so they looked at each other, dance, I'm allowed to dance. Yeah. And the day after, everybody came late as always and came dancing to the room, and it totally backfired because he thought that was in England probably, or in Germany, that's something terrible to do. But there was like a huge party in the morning, so the whole shaming thing, it backfired, but in a good way, because the whole day started with a party, and on the third day, which was the last day, everybody kind of came in time because everybody was looking forward to the dance party in the morning, so it actually worked in the end.
It's funny.
No, one of the things I would say, the last thing about the emotion stuff is, typically when you get into a meeting or there's a kind of a pressure situation, there's a lot of opportunity to kind of suppress your emotions. And so after a meeting or after, an interview or something where you're dealing with other people, that's a really good time to write down what your emotional reactions were during that last hour or whatever the period of time that you were doing something with other people, and see like what's going on in your head, because a lot of times your head is kind of running on its own and kind of making judgments and stuff about other people, and you start to write those things down. You're like, oh my god, I think I might be going crazy here, these things I was thinking. And but it's something to acknowledge. And a lot of those things, I used to do this with my production meetings for construction and so forth, and essentially get people to write down their emotions and try and kind of logically deal with them, and then bring them to the next meeting. So like if they were angry or something like that, they would write that down. I'm so angry, blah blah blah, such a big this, write that stuff down, and then bring it to the next meeting, and how ridiculous it sounds, and how easy it is to interact with other people when you're not in that emotional state. Whereas when you're in emotional state, this is kind of the thing about learning how bad emotions affect your decision making, is being able to see the difference between when you're emotional and can't seem to think about anything else, versus when you're balanced or you're grounded, and you put that same topic in front of somebody and they're like, oh, that was no problem at all, that was just a misunderstanding.
I have one
Amazing.
piece of advice
But with
about
that,
hang on. I have one piece of advice about dealing with angry people. Calm down never worked. Saying calm down is the worst thing you can say to an angry person. That's it. That's my whole advice.
take a deep breath. All right, so Wednesday, 2 p.m. Eastern. will be our next show. We'll be continuing on our value discovery, and I hope to see you there. Thanks for everybody for showing up, and wish you a wonderful day, an evening, morning, whatever it is. Take care.
Thanks, everybody. Have an
Thank
awesome
you.
day.
Bye bye, everybody.